edition of Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. Please take the time now to silence all cellular devices. I have no idea what those are. Pages, beepers, or any other noise-making devices. Also, flash photography is strictly prohibited, and any personal recording is out of the question. There will be one 15-minute intermission. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
I was playing, Lane.
I didn't think it was like to listen, sir.
Well, I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep the science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing are dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir, though I have little experience of it myself up to the present. I have only been married once, and that was the consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it is not very interesting. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing?
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
The country.
What on earth do you do there?
One is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It's excessively boring.
And who are the people that you amuse?
Oh, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire.
Perfectly horrid. Don't speak to any of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Oh, yes, of course. Hello. Why all the cups? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear boy, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
Well, I'm in love with Gwendolen. I've come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you would come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And then the excitement is all over. The pure essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
Oh, I've no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Oh, there is no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
But you have been eating them all this time.
Well, that's a very different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
Well, you need not eat as if you were going to eat at all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
Oh, that's nonsense.
It isn't. It accounts for the extraordinary numbers of bachelors that one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear boy, Gwendolen is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case that Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
What? You mean you have had my cigarette case this whole time? But I wish to goodness you would let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large award.
Well, I wish you would have. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
Yes, but there's no use offering one now that the thing is found.
That is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. But it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
And of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And you have no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. And it's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. It is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, charming old lady she is too, lives in Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me.
But why does your aunt who lives in Tunbridge Wells call herself Little Cecily? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Why, some aunts are tall and some aunts are not tall. That doesn't matter. Surely my aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. It's absurd. Now, just give it back to me.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be? should refer to her own nephew as her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest.
Actually, it isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
But you always told me it was Ernest! I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You respond to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name is Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I have ever saw. It says so on your cards. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I will keep this as proof if ever you try to lie to me, or to Gwendolen, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Ooh, now go on, tell me the whole thing. Now, I must say, I suspected you of being a secret and confirmed Bunburyist, but I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I will reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you're willing to tell me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, produce an explanation and pray. Make it improbable.
My dear boy, there's nothing improbable about my explanation at all. It's quite ordinary, in fact. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you could never possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That's nothing to you, dear boy. You're not going to be invited. I can tell you candidly, though, that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear boy. I have Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algie, I don't suppose you'll be able to understand my real motives. You're hardly serious enough. But when one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to be conducive to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany, who gets into the most dreadful of scrapes. And that, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
Well, that wouldn't be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear boy. Don't try it. Leave it to the people who haven't been at a university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you are a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother by the name of Ernest, so that you may be able to come up to town whenever you like. I have invented an invaluable invalid named Bunbury, so that I may be able to go down to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. For instance, if it weren't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
But I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're very careless about sending out invitations. Nothing annoys someone more than not receiving an invitation.
I say you'd much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind! In the first place, I dine with her on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine with her, I'm always treated as a member of the family, and either sat down with no woman at all, or 2. In the third place, I know very well who she would place me next to tonight. She would place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. It is not very It is not very decent. Indeed, it is not even pleasant, and that sort of thing is extremely on the uprise. The amount of women who flirt with their own husbands in London is perfectly scandalous. It is washing one's clean linen in public. It looks so bad. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
No, I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I will in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. So I'm going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. If ever you get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A married man who does not know Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
No, that's nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, and she's the only girl I've ever seen in my life that I would marry, well, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I can get her out of the way for, say, 10 minutes, that you may have an opportunity at proposing, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
Well, I suppose so. If you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax?
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I am sorry if we're a little late, Algernon. I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Lay! Where are the cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down there twice.
No cucumbers!
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers in the market. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its color. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman, and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I will have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
Oh, I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need say a great disappointment, but the fact of the matter is, I have just received a telegram from my poor friend Bunbury stating that he is very ill. They seem to think that I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Oh, yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take much notice as far as any improvement in his ailment goes. I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough to not have a relapse on Saturday. For I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation. particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury on Augusta, if he is still conscious. But the music, on the other hand, is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. But if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'd be very glad to go over the program with you if you would step into the other room for, say, 10 minutes.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful. Gwendolen, you will accompany me.
Yes, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
Well, I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met. Since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always held an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines, and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone for the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. From the moment Algernon first mentioned that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
Yes, but you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation. Like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolen, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think, Jack, for instance, is a charming name.
Jack? No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than unusually plain. Besides, Jack's notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. Oh, I mean, we must get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely you know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, you're not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolen!
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
Well, my own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
propose for practice. My brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope you always look at me like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing!
Mama! I was begging to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what? May I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mama.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. But it is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mama!
In the carriage, Gwendolen!
Yes, Mama.
Gwendolen, the carriage!
Yes, Mama.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell, but I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit that I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
Nothing? Lady Bracknell?
I'm pleased to hear it. A man should always have an occupation, and I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
Investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
Well, I do now own a country house, of course, with some land attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolen could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Yes, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. I can get it back whenever I like, though, of course, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little now. She is considerably advanced in years.
Ah, nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could be easily altered.
The fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. They dine with us, or come in the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both of my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He evidently was a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, I'm afraid I really don't know. You see, Lady Bracknell, when I had said I had lost both of my parents, it would be nearer to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't really know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Yes, the late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very kindly and charitable disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did this charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket to a seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag. A somewhat large brown handbag with handles on it. A quite ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew find this ordinary handbag?
The cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is the material. Mr. Worthing, I must confess I am somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal some social indiscretion, has probably indeed been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolen's happiness.
I would strongly advise you to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible. And to make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how you could possibly expect me to manage that. I can produce the handbag at any time. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. Now, for heaven's sakes, don't play that ghastly tune, Algy! How idiotic you are!
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say that Gwendolen refused you? I know it is a thing she has. She is always refusing people. I think it most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolen is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we're engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. I don't know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she is a monster, without being a myth, which I think is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't speak of your aunt in that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only way that I can put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the remotest idea on how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
You don't think there is any chance of Gwendolen becoming like her mother and say 150 years' time, do you, Algernon?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his. By the way, did you tell Gwendolen about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
The truth isn't the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl like that. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she is pretty, and to another if she is plain.
That's nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, by the end of the week, I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear boy. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You would much better say that it was a severe chill.
And you're sure severe chills are not hereditary or anything like that?
Of course not.
So, I'll say he died in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
Now, what about little Miss Cardew? I thought you said she was a little bit too interested in your brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that's all right. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl. She has a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays absolutely no attention to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I shall make quite sure you never do. She is excessively pretty, but only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolen about your having an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Yeah, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Gwendolen and Cecily are quite certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that if they call each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we've really got to go and get dressed. Do you know it is nearly 7?
To you it is always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
Well, what do you want to do after dinner? Shall we go to a theatre?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, shall we go to the club?
No. I hate talking.
How about we trot around the Empire around 10?
No. I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Well, what do you want to do?
Nothing.
It's awfully hard work doing nothing.
Miss Fairfax?
Gwendolen, upon my word!
Kindly turn round, Algie. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Gwendolen, I don't think that I can allow this at all.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the look on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
My dear Gwendolen.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred in me the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name holds an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is good post service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Until Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to a carriage, my own darling?
Certainly.
I shall see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A cup of tea, Lane.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane. I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday. You can get out all my dress clothes, smoking jackets, and all of my Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Oh, Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
Now that is a sensible intellectual girl. The only one I've ever seen in my life that I would marry. What on earth are you so amused at?
Oh, I'm just worried about poor Bunbury is all.
You know, if you don't take care of it, boy, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape one day.
Oh, I love scrapes. They're the only thing that are never serious.
Algie, you never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cecily, your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German when he is leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he's so serious I think he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanor is especially to be commended in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one who has a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
Perhaps that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cecily, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometime. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. You certainly would. You know, German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I do not think that even I could have any effect on a character that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and facilitating. You must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter all the wonderful secrets of my life. If I did not write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened. And could it possibly have happened? I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily, and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript unfortunately was abandoned. I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble? This is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism? You are, I trust, well.
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that, not about my German lesson, when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you're not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. run from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not look for him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes, he usually likes to spend his Sundays in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion merely, drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see both of you, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache, after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily, you will read your political economy in my absence.
Horrid political economy. Horrid geography. Horrid German. A Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He has brought his luggage with him. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak with you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come out here. I suppose you'd better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I'm so afraid he will look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I'm not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age, but I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, you mustn't think that I am wicked, cousin Cecily. I am not wicked.
If you're not, then you have certainly been deceiving us in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good the whole time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, well, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
Now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
It is a great disappointment. I am obliged to go up by the first train on Monday. I have a business appointment that I am anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I understand how important it is to not keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life, but still I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He has gone up to buy your outfit.
I certainly wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you'd have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts that I have received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I am afraid that I am not. Which is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you will.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I'm feeling better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me! I should have known that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
You are the prettiest girl I have ever saw.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that any sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about. You
You are much too alone, dear Dr. Trosable. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand. A womanthrope, never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept as well as the practice of the primitive church was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason why the primitive church has not lasted up to the present day. And you do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive. Except to his wife.
And often I've been told not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools?
Mr. Worthing?
Mr. Worthing?
This is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
Yes, I've returned a little earlier than I expected. Dear Dr. Trosable, I hope you are well.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead!
Your brother Ernest? Dead?
Oh, yes, quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you're always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
Oh, no. He died abroad. In Paris, in fact.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I, myself, are peculiarly susceptible to draughts. Will the interment take place here?
No. He seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last. You would no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. Yes, my sermon on the meaning of the man in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in the present case, distressing. I have preached it at harvest celebration, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in a cathedral, as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society of Discontent among the upper orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by some of the analogies I drew.
Yes, wonderful. You mentioned christenings, I believe, Dr. Chasuble. I assume you know how to christen all right? I mean, you are continually christening, are you not?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in this parish. I have often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant in whom you're interested in, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any infant, Dr. Chasuble. I am quite fond of children, no. The fact is, I would like to be christened myself, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already?
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
Oh, I certainly intend to have. Of course, I wouldn't trouble you with it, if it would bother you in any way.
Not at all. The sprinkling and indeed the immersion of adults is a perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion, Doctor!
Oh, you need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At what hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
Well, I might trot round around 5, if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. In fact, I have 2 similar ceremonies to perform at that time. A case of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages of your own estate. Poor Jenkins, the carter, a most hard-working man.
I don't know that I see the appeal in being christened along with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will intrude no longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg you not to be too much bowed down by grief. What seems to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm so pleased to see you back, but what horrid clothes you've got on. Do go and change them.
My child, my child!
What's the matter, Uncle Jack? You look as if you've had a toothache, and I've got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room?
Who?
Your brother!
My brother?
Your brother Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense, I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that, Uncle Jack. However badly he may have wronged you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are joyful tidings.
After we all had been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me particularly distressing.
My brother's in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Oh, good heavens!
Brother John! I have come up from town expressly to tell you that I am very sorry for all of the trouble that I have given you, and that I intend on leading a much better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often.
So he's been speaking to you about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he's told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Well, I shan't have to talk to you about Bunbury. Or about anything else. It is enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Well, I must admit, all the faults are on my side. But I must say, Brother John's coldness is peculiarly painful, especially considering this is my first time coming here.
Uncle Jack, if you do not shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never.
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I shall ever do it.
Oh, it's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the 2 brothers together.
Cecily, you will come with us.
Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful task today, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgment.
I feel very happy.
You must leave here at once. I don't allow Bunbury here.
I have unpacked Mr. Ernest's things and placed them in the room next to yours, sir. I suppose that is all right.
What?
His luggage. I have unpacked it and placed it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a large lunching basket.
I'm afraid I can't stay for more than a week this time.
Merriman, do order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
Ooh, what a fearful liar you are, Jack. I have not been called back to town at all.
Oh, yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasures, in the smallest degree.
Well, I can perfectly understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous in them. Why don't you go and get changed? It is perfectly childish to be in mourning for someone who is now going to be staying with you in your house for a week as a guest.
You are certainly not going to be staying with me for a whole week as a guest, or anything else. You've got to leave. Yes, by the 4:05 train.
I certainly wouldn't leave you while you are in mourning. I would think it very unfriendly. If I were in mourning, you wouldn't leave me, I suppose. I would think it very rude.
Will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you are not too long. I've never seen someone take so long to dress, and with such little result.
Well, it is better than being permanently overdressed as you are.
If I'm occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by always being immensely overeducated.
Oh! Your vanity is ridiculous. Your conduct an outrage, and your presence here in my garden utterly absurd. However, you have got against the wall, and I wish you a pleasant journey back to town. This bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
I think it has been a great success. I am in love with Cecily, and that is everything. But I must see her before I go, and make arrangements for another Bunbury. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I really came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
He has ordered the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
He is going to send me away.
Then have we got to part?
I'm afraid so.
It is always painful to part from people whom one have known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity, but a momentary separation from anyone whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank you.
The dog cart is at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Yes, miss.
I hope that I shall not offend you, Cecily, if I state quite frankly and openly that you seem to me to be the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Oh, do you really keep a diary? I'd give anything to look at it. May I?
Oh, no. It is simply a very young girl's record of her thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy, but pray don't stop, Ernest. I delight in taking down from dictation. I have reached absolute perfection. You may go on. I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one is dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cecily, I hope, ever since I laid my eyes upon your incomparable beauty, I've dared to love you wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cecily.
The dog cart is waiting, sir.
Tell it to come around next week, at the same hour.
Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying till next week at the same hour.
Oh, I don't care about Uncle Jack. I don't care about anyone else in the world but you. Cecily, I love you. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy, of course. Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
For the last 3 months?
Yes, it will be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
Oh, but how is the engagement settled?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And, of course, a man who is much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
Darling. And when was the engagement actually settled?
On the 14th of February last. Worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or another, and after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this little bangle with the true lover's knot I promise you always to wear.
Oh, did I get you this? It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for you leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters. But my darling Cecily, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well I was forced to write them for you. I wrote always 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
Oh, do let me read them, Cecily.
No, I couldn't possibly. It would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why was it ever broken off? What had I done? I had done nothing at all. Cecily, I am very much hurt indeed to hear that our engagement was ever broken off. Particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
You perfect angel, Cecily.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Of course, darling, with a little help from others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again, Cecily.
I didn't think I could now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there's the question of your name.
Oh, yes! Of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it had always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There's something in the name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
Oh, my sweet, darling, loving Cecily. Do you mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But what other name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name Algernon.
Well, I don't see any reason you shouldn't like the name. It is a very good name. In fact, it is a rather aristocratic name. Half the chaps who get into the bankruptcy court are named Algernon. But really, Cecily, if I was called Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear I should never be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, I suppose your rector here is very practiced in all the rites and ceremonials of the church, yes?
Oh, yes. Dr. Trottle is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
Then I must speak to him at once, on a most important christening. I mean in a most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged for the last 3 months, and that I only met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is! I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal into my diary.
A Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing. On very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over in the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray, ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew? What a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray sit down. I might call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolen, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that's all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. Of course, you have never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle, Papa, I'm glad to say, is almost entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. Cecily, my mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It's part of her system. So, would you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolen. I'm very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I'm Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that the news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I'm very fond of you, Cecily. I've liked you ever since I met you. But I feel bound to state that now that I know that you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish you were just a little older than you seem to be, and not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Oh, pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish you were full 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolen. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who's my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Ah, well, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I've never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours. Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite sure. In fact, I'm going to be his.
I beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolen, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I feel there might be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
You must be under some misconception, dear Gwendolen. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
You're certainly very curious. He asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cecily, if it is any disappointment to you, but I am afraid that I have the prior claim.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolen, if it caused you any mental or physical anguish, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade.
I call it a spade. I'm glad to say I've never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual. Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh, yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills, quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties. I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town?
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London. May I offer you some tea?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. And though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such manners. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, like I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Oh. Ernest, my own Ernest, a moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
Dear little Cecily, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there was some misunderstanding, Gwendolen. The gentleman whose arm is at present around your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack. Oh.
Here's Ernest.
My own love.
A moment. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To what young lady? Oh, good heavens, Gwendolen!
Yes, to good heavens, Gwendolen. I mean to Gwendolen.
Of course not! What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there might be some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is currently embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief.
Oh.
Are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Oh. Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But It certainly is, John. It has been for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on both of us. My poor wounded Cecily. My sweet wronged Gwendolen.
You will call me sister, won't you?
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is of some importance to us where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolen, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. This is really the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position. And I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. But I can tell you quite frankly that I have no brother, Ernest. I have no brother at all. I have never had a brother, and I certainly don't intend to have one at any time in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Have you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
Cecily, it is clear that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It's not a very pleasant position for a young girl to suddenly find herself in, is it?
Let's go into the house. They will hardly dare to venture after us in there.
No, men are so cowardly, aren't they?
So this ghastly state of things is what you call bunburying, I suppose?
Yes. And what a wonderful Bunbury it is! It is the most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you had absolutely no right to Bunbury here.
That is absurd! One has a right to Bunbury anywhere one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens!
Well, one has to be serious about something if one wants to have any amusement in life. I happen to be very serious about Bunburying. What on earth you are serious about, I haven't the remotest idea. About everything, I should fancy. You have such an absolutely trivial nature.
Well, the only small satisfaction I get in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to venture off to the country quite as often as you used to, dear boy. And quite a good thing, too.
Your brother's looking a little off-color, isn't he, dear Jack? You won't be able to run up to town as often as your wicked custom was. And not a bad thing, either.
And as for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I must say that you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that. It's entirely inexcusable. To say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
I can see no possible defense at all for your deceiving a brilliant, clever, innocent girl like Gwendolen. To say nothing of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen. That's all. I love her.
Well, I simply wanted to be engaged to Cecily. I adore her.
There's certainly no chance of you marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't see much likelihood, Jack, of you and Miss Fairfax being united.
Well, that's no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk about it. Only people like stockbrokers do that, and then merely at dinner parties.
How can you sit there, calmly eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble I can't make out? You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
I can't eat muffins in an agitated manner! The butter would probably get on my cuffs.
Oh, what a tragedy.
One should always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I say it's heartless you're eating muffins at all, under the circumstances.
When I am in trouble, eating is the only thing that consoles me. Indeed, when I am in great trouble, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. At the present moment, I am eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I am particularly fond of muffins.
Well, there's no reason for you to eat them all in that greedy way.
I wish you'd have tea cake instead. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens, I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you have just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins!
I said it was perfectly heartless of you, under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
It's fine.
Stop!
I wish to goodness you would go.
You can't possibly ask me to go without having some dinner first. It's absurd. I never go without my dinner. Nobody ever does, except for vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I have just made arrangements with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 6:15 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I've just made arrangements myself with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:30. And I shall naturally take the name of Ernest. Gwendolen would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest. It's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There's no evidence I was ever christened by anybody. I should think it probable I never was, and so does Dr. Chasuble. It's entirely different in your case. You've been christened already.
Yes, but I've not been christened in years.
You have been christened. That's the important thing.
Yes, so I know that my constitution can stand it. If you're not quite so sure about your ever having been christened, I must say I think it rather dangerous you're venturing on it now. It might make you very unwell. You can't have forgotten that recently someone very close to you was carried off in Paris by a severe chill.
But you said yourself severe chills were not hereditary.
Yes, they used to be, I know, but I dare say it is now. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things.
You're always talking nonsense.
Jack! You're out of the muffins again! I wish you wouldn't! There are only 2 left!
But I hate tea cake!
Then why on earth do you allow tea cake to be served up for your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality?
Algernon! I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
I haven't quite finished my tea yet. Besides, there is still 1 muffin left.
The fact that they did not follow us at once into the house, as anyone else would have done, seems to me to show they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Couldn't you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching! That's very forward of them.
Let us maintain a dignified silence.
Certainly, it's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, there is just one question.
Gwendolen, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
So that I might have a chance at meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't, but that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, it is style, not sincerity that is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer to me for pretending to have a brother? Was it that you might have an opportunity of coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. The explanation certainly seems satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to have the stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief said. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that cannot be sacrificed. Which of us should tell them the task is not a pleasant one?
Can we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as others. Will you take time for me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are willing to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
Darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens.
Gwendolen, what does this mean?
Merely that I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Come here. Sit down immediately. Hesitation of any kind is a sign of mental decay in the young and of physical weakness in the old. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's sudden flight by her trusty maid, whose confidence I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once by luggage train. Her unhappy father, I'm glad to say, is under the impression that she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme on the influence of a permanent income on thought. I do not propose to undeceive him. Indeed, I have never undeceived him on any question. I would consider it wrong. But of course, you will clearly understand that all communication between yourself and my daughter must cease immediately from this moment. On this point, as on all points, I am firm.
I am engaged to be married to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
You are nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
May I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Oh, Bunbury! No, Bunbury is not here. In fact, Bunbury is somewhere else. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die? His death must have been extremely sudden.
Oh, I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Oh, Bunbury? He was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of some revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he is well punished for his morbidity.
Oh, no, Aunt Augusta, I mean he was found out. The doctors found out that he could not live anymore. And so, Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinions of his physicians. I am glad, however, that he made up his mind at the last to some definite course of action and acted under proper medical advice. And now that we have finally got rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask, Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew Algernon is holding in what seems to me to be a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That young lady is Miss Cecily Cardew, my ward.
I am engaged to be married to Cecily, Aunt Augusta.
I beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know whether there is anything peculiarly exciting in the air of this particular part of Hertfordshire, but the number of engagements that go on seem to me to be considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I think some preliminary inquiry on my part would not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations in London? I merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew at 149 Belgrave Square Southwest, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the Sporran Fifeshire, NB.
That is satisfactory. 3 addresses always inspires confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof have I of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
I have known strange errors in that publication.
Well, Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messieurs Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby. A firm of the very highest position in their profession. Indeed, I am told that one of the Mr. Markbys can occasionally be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How wonderfully kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, Miss Cardew's certificates of birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles. Both the English and German varieties.
A life crowded with incident, I see. Though perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I am not myself in favor of premature experiences. Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I had better ask if Miss Cardew has any little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds. That is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
A moment, Mr. Worthing. £130,000. And in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to me a most attractive young girl now that I look at her. Few girls of the present day have any really solid qualities, any of the qualities that last and improve with time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come over here, dear. Pretty child, your dress is sadly simple, and your hair is quite as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all of that. Kindly turn round. No, this side view is what I want. Yes, as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. The 2 weak points in today's society are its want of principle and its want of profile. The chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on the way the chin is worn. It is worn very high just at present. Algernon?
Yes, Aunt Augusta.
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cecily is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, and I don't care 2 pence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. Dear child, of course you know that Algernon has nothing but his debt to depend upon. But I do not approve of mercenary marriages. When I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind, but I never dreamed of allowing that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cecily, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I am not myself in favor of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of figuring out each other's character before marriage. Which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell. But I am Miss Cardew's guardian, and until she becomes of age, she cannot legally marry without my consent. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, I may almost say ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What more could one desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly to you, Lady Bracknell, about your nephew. But the fact is, I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew Algernon? Impossible. He is an Oxonian.
I'm afraid there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This morning, during my temporary absence in London on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house under the false pretense of being my brother. Under that assumed name, he drank, I've just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of my Pierre Jouet Brut 89, wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing in his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of that afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently staked tea and devoured every single muffin. What makes his conduct all the more heartless is that he knew from the first that I have no brother, I have never had a brother, and I don't intend to have one, not even of any kind, at any time in the future. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
Mr. Worthing, after careful consideration, I have decided to entirely overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
Very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come over here, dear. How old are you, child?
Well, I'm really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 at evening parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age and free from the restraints of tutelage, so I see no reason why your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
I beg your pardon, Lady Bracknell, for interrupting you yet again. But it seems only fair to tell you that, according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not become legally of age until she is 35.
That does not seem to me to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who, of their own free will, have remained 35 for years. I see no reason why our dear Cecily should not be even still more attractive at the age you mentioned than she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course, darling, you know I could.
I know, I felt it instinctively, but I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It makes me rather cross. I'm not punctual myself, but I do like punctuality in others. And waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done, Cecily?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I am bound to point out seems to show a somewhat impatient nature, I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
But the decision is entirely in your own hands, Lady Bracknell. By the moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I will gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you propose is out of the question.
Then a passionate celibacy is all any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we've already missed 5, if not 6 trains. To miss any more could expose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christening, sir! Is that not somewhat premature?
But both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
At their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me at the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I'm on my way to join her.
Pray, allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove to be one of vital importance to myself and Lord Bracknell. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I have been waiting for you there for 1 hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism! Prism! Where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104, Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a more than usually revolting 3-volume novel, but the baby was not there! Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit with shame that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded on my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had also with me a somewhat old but capricious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction in which I had written during my few unoccupied hours in a moment of mental abstraction for which I may never forgive myself. I deposited the manuscript in the bassinet and the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
Which railway station?
Victoria, the Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolen, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if you were having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They're always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish he would arrive at some conclusion.
This suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully now. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
Yes, it appears to be mine. Here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Here is the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington. And here, on the look, are my initials. I had forgotten that in an extravagant mood I had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am so delighted to have it so unexpectedly returned to me. It had been a great inconvenience, being without it for all those years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you today than just the handbag. I was the baby you had placed in it.
You?
Yes. Oh, Mother!
Oh, Mr. Worthing! I am unmarried!
Unmarried? I do not deny that is a serious blow. But who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Oh, Mother! I forgive you.
Oh, Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you mind kindly informing me who I am?
I am afraid the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently, Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother. Oh, then I do have a brother after all. Cecily, haven't you doubted me that I had a brother? Dr. Chaucer will meet my unfortunate brother. Yeah, Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolen. That's my unfortunate brother. You young scoundrel, Algy. You never behaved to me as a brother in all your life. You'll have to show me a bit more respect in the future.
Well, not till today, old boy, I must admit. For I was a bit out of practice.
My own, but what own are you? What's your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Yes, I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision on my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections. What a noble nature you have, Gwendolen.
Lady Ortacaster. When I had been placed in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
So I was christened. Could you remember what name I was given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was his Christian name?
I cannot, at the present moment, recall the general's Christian name, but I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years.
Algy, could you remember what our father's Christian name was?
My dear boy, we were never even on speaking terms. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in military registries of the period.
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life, but I have no doubt that his name would appear in any military directory.
Military list of the last 40 years, I guess. These delightful records should be my constant study. Yes, M. General. Malum, Max Baum, Markby? Markby. Mobs? Oh, dear me, these men have such ghastly names. Mobs, Migsby, Moncrief! Lieutenant Colonel, 1840, no. Lieutenant, Private, General, 1869. Christian names, Ernest, John. I've always told you, Gwendolen, my name is Ernest. Well, it really is. I mean, naturally it is Ernest.
Yes, I remember now that the general's name was Ernest. I knew I had some reason for disliking the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first that you could have no other name.
Gwendolen, it is a terrible thing for a man to discover suddenly that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Could you
I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
I own one.
Oh, Letitia.
Frederick, at last!
Cecily, at last!
Gwendolen at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta. I now know for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.